in the far reaches of the western desert, where the horizon wavers like melted glass and the wind carries stories older than any ranch fence line, a seasoned rancher named Cole Maddox stumbled onto something no one could explain. 3 newborn fillies, barely hours old, tucked against the shadow of a massive concrete canal wall. No mare in sight. No hoofprints leading in or out. Just those fragile little bodies shivering in the heat, as if the desert itself had given birth to a mystery. And the deeper Cole looked, the stranger it became. Because what he uncovered next didn't just stun the locals. It rattled the entire ranching community across the region. And today, here on a Mr. West Legends, we're going to walk you through every twist of this unbelievable discovery. From the first moment, Cole spotted those tiny silhouettes to the revelation that left even the toughest cowhand silent. If you love Wild West ranch stories that mix heart, grit, and a whole lot of frontier mystery, give this video a like. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next tale, and share it with someone who's got a soft spot for horses or the Old West spirit. All right, saddle up. The desert had a way of swallowing sound, especially in the early morning. The kind of quiet that pressed against your ears until you heard your own heartbeat louder than the breeze. Cole Maddox knew that silence well. After 30 years of ranching in the West, he could tell the difference between the hush of a calm morning and the uneasy quiet that meant something was off. That particular sunrise, riding along the old service road by the giant concrete canal, the world felt distrustful. Like it knew something he didn't. Cole had been out checking for broken fence lines after a night of hard winds. His mare Sage stepped carefully along the gravel path as he scanned the open desert. Nothing but the usual. Brittle shrubs, scattered boulders, an empty stretch of land that could fool anyone into thinking it had no secrets. But the desert always had secrets. He was about 500 yards from the canal wall when Sage slowed. Her ears pricked forward, tail flicking uneasily. Cole trusted her instincts as much as his own. He stopped, listened. At first, nothing. Then, just barely, a thin sound rose above the wind. Soft, high-pitched, almost like whimpering. Sage stepped closer to the edge, and Cole followed her gaze down toward the narrow maintenance path that hugged the base of the enormous concrete wall. From up top, it was a 30-foot drop, too steep for a horse to climb down, too smooth for anything to climb up. And yet the faint cries were coming from below. Cole dismounted and walked to the edge. He leaned over, squinting against the rising sun. What he saw didn't make sense. 3 tiny shapes huddled together in the sand. At first, he thought they were fawns. But then one of them tried lifting its head, wobbling like its neck was made of wet rope. A small, delicate muzzle, a flicker of a tail, and a thin, weak attempt at a neigh. Fillies, newborn fillies. Cole's jaw tightened. There was no possible way for a mare to get down there. The only path in was a locked steel access gate half a mile away. No tracks on the dirt road. No disturbance in the sand. Nothing but those fragile little bodies pressed against the wall, as if they'd been dropped out of the sky. His first instinct wasn't wonder. It was urgency. Newborns didn't survive long in desert heat, not without their mother's milk. He swung into action with the calm precision of someone who'd done enough rescues to know that hesitation kills. He tied Sage securely to a stabilizing post and hurried along the road to the access gate. The padlock was intact. No tampering. He cursed under his breath and scaled the fence. Even with age creeping into his knees, he moved fast. By the time he reached the fillies, his breath was ragged, but his worry hit harder. Up close, they looked even worse. They couldn't have been more than a few hours old. Umbilical cords still attached, fur damp and patchy, legs trembling under the strain of simply existing. One was a soft chestnut with a blaze running down its nose. Another was pale cream, almost ghostly in the morning light. The third, coal black with eyes too big for its little head, blinking up at him like he was the first thing it had ever seen.
"Jeremiah," she whispered. "Don't. It's the only way to draw his fire away from the rest of you," Cade said. He kept walking. Boone's grin sharpened. "Throw down your rifle." Cade did. Boone came down the ridge in steady strides, his boots kicking small stones loose. He held a six-shooter loosely in his good hand, but the way he handled it spoke of lethal familiarity. "Thought I'd killed you last winter," Boone said as he approached. "Blizzards tend to swallow men whole. But not you. You're cursed with survival." "You talk too much," Cade said. Boone's brows lifted with amusement. "Perhaps. But now that you're here, let's end this the old way." Boone tossed the detonator aside. It landed with a harmless clatter. "No tricks," he said. "Just you and me." Cade nodded once. "Fine." The two men circled each other in the rising dawn. No sound but the wind. No time but the present. Boone drew first. Cade was faster. His shot tore across Boone's shoulder. Boone staggered, but fired again, grazing Cade's ribs. Pain flared white, but Cade advanced, firing once more. Boone's revolver slipped from his hand. He fell to his knees. "You're finished," Cade said. Boone looked up, eyes burning with a strange peace. "Maybe so, but I never feared death. Only dying forgotten." Cade holstered his gun. "History will forget you. Good men don't." Boone's breath rasped once more, then ended. The canyon fell silent. Cade stood still until Sierra rode to him, her voice steady but subdued. "It's over." He exhaled. Finally, the outfit gathered around, relief softening their battle-worn faces. Cade looked skyward. The sun had risen fully now, burning away the last shadows of the night. Sierra nudged her mare closer. "Where do you ride next, Jeremiah?" Cade looked over the plains, stretching endless and open. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere honest. The frontier always has space for a man trying to set things right." Sierra smiled faintly. "Then I'll ride with you." Together, they mounted up and turned toward the horizon. Buckshot snorted, eager. The plains shimmered with promise. Justice had been won. A new trail waited, and Jeremiah Cade rode toward it, unafraid. Cole exhaled slowly. "This isn't just a mystery anymore," he said quietly. "This is a hunt." And someone out there had just marked him as the prey. The sun pushed itself up over the far ridgeline like a molten coin, its light spilling across the basin where the valley finally opened into the plains. Smoke thinned from the scorched cottonwoods behind them, drifting skyward in a slow, defeated spiral. The night's battle at Larkspur Pass had ended only hours earlier, but it already felt like another lifetime. To Jeremiah Cade, the morning clarity cut as sharply as a whetted Bowie knife. The long war between him and Malric Boone was over. Or it should have been. Buckshot shifted under him, the stallion's flanks damp and warm after their all-night descent from the pass. Cade reached down and stroked the horse's neck, feeling the tension in the animal's muscles. Buckshot was a fighter, a creature who sensed danger long before men put names to it. And this morning, even with the gun smoke behind them, Buckshot held the stiffness of alertness. On Cade's right, Sierra Alden kept pace on her dun mare, her rifle sheathed across her saddle, her eyes scanning the world with the calm precision of someone who had walked too often on the knife point of survival. Her hat brim was singed from the firestorm Boone's men had unleashed higher up the pass, but her resolve had not burned with it. Behind them, the surviving riders of the Alden outfit moved in deliberate silence, a column of grit and discipline carrying their own wounds without complaint. "Feels too quiet," Sierra said, voice low and steady. Cade nodded. Boone's men scattered fast. Too fast for men who believed in their leader. "Which means Boone planned a fallback," she replied. "He always has one." Cade didn't answer. His jaw was set. Malric Boone was a ghost who refused to stay buried. Too many tombstones across the frontier bore the price of his ambitions. Too many families had felt the weight of his cruelty. Last night's firestorm at Larkspur Pass had been meant to seal an ending. Cade had seen Boone thrown from a collapsing ledge when the dynamite went off. He had seen the man fall, but instinct told him the truth. Boone was alive, and he would not leave his feud with Cade unresolved. They rode until the basin narrowed into a natural choke point framed by sandstone bluffs. The wind whistled through the porous rock, carrying with it the scent of distant water. Cade lifted a hand, signaling halt. The riders behind him braked their horses. Sierra leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing at the terrain ahead. "You feel that too," she said. He did. Something in the stillness. A wrongness tucked into the natural order of the land, like a note souring in the middle of an otherwise perfect chord. "Ridge left," Cade murmured. "Tracks on the slope. Someone scouted this place at dawn." Sierra scanned, then pointed. 2, maybe 3. Single file, soft tread. "Good riders, not amateurs." "Boone's trained men," Cade said. "Trying to funnel us." Cade lifted his rifle from the saddle holster. The wood felt familiar under his palms, as dependable as the heartbeat in his chest. He motioned for the Alden outfit to fan out low. Sierra moved with him, their horses advancing at a measured walk. The canyon floor bent left, revealing an outcrop jutting over the path. Cade's eyes locked on a flicker of movement, a glint of metal, the gleam of an eye behind scope. Instinct jerked him sideways in the saddle. A rifle shot cracked through the air. Buckshot reared but held his ground. Cade swung behind a boulder as another shot rang out, chipping stone. Sierra fired back in a quick, precise arc. "3 on the ridge, halfway down," she shouted. The outfit thundered into action, hooves splitting dust, rifles barking in disciplined rhythm. Echoes slapped off the stone walls. Cade popped from cover long enough to send a round spinning toward the flash of Boone's sniper rifle. The man toppled backward, rolling down the ridge like a discarded sack. But a new voice cut through the chaos, booming with the rough optimism of a man who believed himself untouchable. "Well now, Jeremiah Cade, I knew you'd ride out of that firestorm. Figured I owed you a proper welcome." Boone's voice. Cade's teeth clenched. "Show yourself." Malric Boone emerged atop the ridge like a specter birth from the early dawn. He wore a dust-coated duster coat that fluttered behind him, and his right arm was bandaged from elbow to wrist. Burnt, bruised, but not broken. His face bore soot and dried blood, and yet his smile was the same cruel crescent Cade had come to know. "You knocked me off a cliff, Cade," Boone called. "Impolite, but I'm a forgiving man, so I'll give you one chance to walk away." Cade's response was steady, cold. "You're done, Boone. Stand down." Boone chuckled. Always the righteous cowboy, always carrying the frontier's conscience. "Tell me, Cade, how many men died following your sense of justice? 10? 20? You killing me won't bring any of them back." Cade lifted his rifle, but Boone raised a hand. "Before you pull that trigger, consider that I've lined this canyon with 10 pounds of blasting powder. Enough to send you, that woman, and your whole band straight into the next life." Sierra muttered, "He's bluffing." "No," Cade said softly. "Boone never bluffs about explosives." A tension took hold across the canyon like a wire pulled taut. The outfit froze, measuring the distance between Boone's hand and whatever detonator he had hidden. Cade swung off buckshot slowly. Boone's eyes brightened. "That's it, Cade. Come talk to me." Cade stepped forward, each stride measured. Sierra tensed in the saddle. Cole's fingers tightened on the reins. "Those fillies were dying. That seems like a place I should be." The stranger tilted his head slightly. "You should forget you saw them." Cole's heart beat harder. "Why?" A small, almost amused smile crossed the man's face. "Because, Mr. Maddox, you've stumbled into something larger than horses." With that, the man turned his horse and rode off, leaving a long trail of dust and silence behind him. Cole stared after him, pulse thudding. Larger than horses. Larger than 3 abandoned fillies. Whatever this was, he wasn't tracking an accident. He was tracking a secret. And someone out there didn't want him anywhere near the truth. The stranger's warning lingered in Cole Maddox's mind long after his silhouette vanished into the heat shimmer. The desert didn't forget faces, and Cole definitely wouldn't forget that one. But he couldn't let fear steer him off course. Not with 3 newborn fillies lying in his barn, clinging to life. Fear didn't raise horses. Determination did. Cole guided Sage back toward the canal wall, replaying every detail of what he had found. The cold sand, the strange metal fragments, the symbol etched onto the small cylinder. the human footprints, and now a man who spoke like the Fillies were part of something dangerous. The more Cole thought about it, the more one possibility kept pressing forward. Someone was conducting an operation out here. Something hidden, something illegal. And those Fillies weren't abandoned. They were evidence. He returned to the exact spot he'd discovered the footprints. This time, he crouched low, studying the ground more carefully. The tracks weren't just from one person. There were two sets, one deep and firm, the other lighter, smaller. The lighter set seemed to hop intermittently, like the person carrying something heavy or awkward. 3 newborns, perhaps. Cole followed the trail again, moving slower. He checked shadows, scanned boulders, listened for movement. Nothing, just the quiet hum of desert heat. He circled the area twice, looking for anything he'd missed earlier. And that's when he saw it. An unnatural depression in the sand about 20 feet from the boulders, shallow enough to disappear unless the sun hit it just right. He knelt beside it, brushing away the top layer with steady hands. A tarp, black, industrial grade, edges weighted with sand. When he lifted a corner, a puff of cooler air escaped. Not the kind you'd expect from simple shade. This was engineered cooling. He lifted more sand. The tarp gave way easily. Beneath it lay something that made his heart stumble in his chest. A portable generator, wired to a compact refrigeration unit, half buried in the ground. Why would someone hide a cooling system out here, in the middle of nowhere at the base of canal wall? Cole pulled the tarp back fully. 2 metal cases lay beside the unit. Heavy duty, locked, but one had a crack in its latch, likely from being dropped, and the lid popped with a gentle tug. Inside were medical supplies, but not ranching supplies. These were far too advanced. Sterile birthing kits, surgical gloves, specialized nutrient vials marked with a code he didn't recognize, and a laminated sheet with handwritten instructions. Batch 7. Deliver before sunrise. 3 only. Keep temperature regulated. No noise. No mistakes. Cole sat back on his heels, pulse hammering. Batch 7. Deliver before sunrise. 3 only. A cold realization washed through him. This wasn't a one-time incident. Someone had been doing this for a while. Multiple batches. Multiple deliveries. Always in secrecy. Always under the cover of night. But why here? Why newborn Fillies? He opened the second case, expecting more medical tools. He was wrong. Inside were documents. Plastic folders stuffed with papers, maps, and charts. He thumbed through them quickly, eyes scanning for anything familiar. Most were too technical or coded to decipher immediately, but a few details jumped out. Genetic sequencing reports, full development charts, temperature-controlled gestation notes, all referencing the same symbol etched into the metal cylinder. The stylized horse head with the sharp line running through it. Cole felt his throat tighten. Someone wasn't breeding horses. Someone was manufacturing them, or experimenting on them. He didn't know which was worse. One folder held a set of photos. Grainy, nighttime images of men loading something into a large truck. The shapes were hard to make out, but the silhouettes looked small. Fragile, like foals. Not Fillies in a pasture or barn. Fillies in crates. Cole's breath grew shallow. He flipped to the next page and froze. A map of the desert. Hand-drawn markings. Circles. X's. And one line tracing the exact route he rode every morning, including the stretch by the canal wall. Someone had been watching the area closely, calculating timing, predicting patterns. A faint noise broke his concentration. A crunch. Sand shifting. Cole snapped the folder shut and rose to his feet, scanning the area. His hand hovered near the knife on his belt. The silence returned to its usual weight, heavy and suspicious. He waited. Nothing. But the feeling didn't leave. He knew eyes were on him. The desert was too still, too attentive. He covered the cases with the tarp again, smoothing the sand over it. He couldn't carry everything back with him now. It was too heavy, too obvious, but he needed to keep it hidden until he could return with help. He mounted Sage and rode back toward the ranch, faster this time. The wind stung his cheeks. The sun climbed higher, and his mind raced just as fast as his mare. When he reached the ranch, Lena rushed to him from the barn. "Cole, you need to see this." His stomach dropped. He followed her inside. The foaling stall was dim but warm. The three fillies lay close together, their breathing steadier. That was the good news. The bad news sat in the feeding trough. A capsule, cold, metallic, identical to the one he'd found in the rocks. Cole picked it up, dread tightening his chest. Where did this come from? Lena shook her head. I don't know. I stepped out for 10 minutes to grab more formula. When I came back, it was just sitting there. Cole's pulse pounded. Someone had entered the barn. Someone who knew exactly where the fillies were. And they'd left a message. He turned the capsule over. This one wasn't empty like the first. A faint clicking sound came from inside when he shook it. He carefully unscrewed the top. A small strip of paper rolled out. He uncurled it and stared at the words printed in block letters. Do not interfere. There will be no warning next time. Lena covered her mouth with her hand. Cole, what is happening? He folded the note tightly, forcing his breath to steady. Someone's using the desert as a drop site. They're breeding or creating these fillies. Maybe illegal genetics. Maybe experimental stock. And they don't want us anywhere near it. Lena swallowed hard. What are you going to do? The only thing I can, Cole said. Protect them. And find out who's behind this. He took both capsules, the one from the barn and the one from the rocks, and placed them in his pocket. But the moment he stepped outside, he stopped in his tracks. The stranger's horse prints. Fresh. Leading right up to his property line. Then turning away. Whoever that man was, he had been watching. Close enough to see into the barn. Close enough to approach without being heard. The fillies settled in the trailer, their weak breaths barely audible beneath the hum of Sage's quickened hoofbeats. Cole Maddox wasn't a man easily rattled, but the morning's discovery clung to him like burrs under a saddle blanket. Every instinct he'd sharpened over 3 decades whispered the same warning. Something didn't add up. And out here, when something didn't add up, trouble was never far behind. He reached his ranch 20 minutes later. The place looked the same as always. Weathered fences, wide paddocks, a dusty old barn with doors that creaked like a tired storyteller. On a normal day, that familiar sight grounded him. Today, it only reminded him how unprepared he was for whatever he'd just dragged into his world. As he unloaded the newborns, he called for his ranch hand, a sharp-eyed woman named Lena Briggs. She moved with the quick, confident energy of someone raised around horses. The moment she saw the fillies, her expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief. Cole, she murmured, kneeling beside the cream-colored one. These babies look like they were born an hour ago. Where's the mare? That's the problem, he answered, wiping sweat from his neck. There was no mare, no tracks, nothing. They were lined up against the south canal wall, like somebody set them there. Lena's gaze drifted upward, as though trying to picture it. Nobody takes newborns into that area. You'd need a crane to get them down there. I know. He met her eyes. But someone did. They transferred the fillies into the foaling stall, layering fresh straw and starting warm milk replacer. Lena handled the feeding while Cole paced outside the stall, rubbing his palm against his beard as he replayed every detail. The canal wall, the locked gate, the untouched sand, the terrifying frailty in those 3 tiny bodies. Any idea who'd do this? Lena asked eventually, stepping out to let the fillies rest. Cole shook his head. If it was abandonment, why hide them somewhere impossible? And if it was meant to be temporary, why leave them without a mare? Newborns don't survive more than 2 hours without colostrum. Unless, Lena said slowly, they weren't meant to survive. Cole's stomach tightened. She wasn't wrong. But the thought pushed the mystery in a darker direction. He grabbed his hat from the hook by the barn door. I'm heading back out there. Lena frowned. Cole, you've been up since 4. Take a minute. I don't have a minute, he said. Something is out there. And the longer we wait, the colder the trail gets. Sage whinnied when he approached, already sensing his urgency. Within moments, he was back on the service road, the dull concrete of the canal wall looming ahead like a giant scar across the landscape. Cole dismounted near the same stabilizing post he'd tied Sage to earlier that morning. The stillness around the area hit him again, but this time something was different. He couldn't pinpoint why. The wind had picked up, carrying a faint smell of dust and something else. something he recognized but couldn't identify yet. He walked to the edge of the drop and scanned the bottom of the canal wall again. The sand was just as untouched as before. But now, without the Fillies drawing his focus, he noticed smaller details. Scratches on the concrete. Not natural erosion, not weathering, but parallel streaks, uneven in length, faint yet deliberate, like something had scraped against the wall. He knelt, tracing one with his fingers. Rough texture, newer than the surrounding surface. But the angle made no sense. If an animal had made these, it would have had to climb straight up. Horses didn't climb. Cole climbed down the same ladder he'd used earlier, landing softly on the sand. The desert heat radiated upward, but beneath it, he felt something else. A temperature difference. Slight but noticeable. A thin stretch of colder air curling near the bottom of the wall. He knelt again and pressed his palm to the sand. Cold. Sand didn't get cold in broad daylight, unless something beneath it was affecting the temperature. He brushed the top layer away with careful sweeps of his hand. Underneath, something buried. A piece of metal, long flat, with jagged edges like it had broken off something larger. Cole dug it free and lifted it. The metal was unnaturally cool, even under the sun. At one end, a section curled upward like a bent hook. Not ranch equipment, not machinery used by the irrigation district. Something else, something custom-made. And near the base of the canal wall, half hidden under a mound of sand, he spotted more metal fragments. Small, sharp, almost needle-like. He gathered them up, turning them in his hand. Lightweight, matte gray, and oddly clean, as if they'd been newly made. The uneasy feeling in his chest deepened. These weren't tools. They were components. Purpose-built. But for what? As he stood, a gust of wind kicked up a swirl of sand. Cole shielded his face, squinting until it settled. And that's when he saw them. Tracks. But not hoof prints. Footprints. Human. Barely visible, leading away from the canal wall toward a cluster of ragged boulders about 50 yards out. Someone had been down here recently. Very recently, if the prints hadn't yet blown away completely. Cole followed them, careful to step in the existing impressions to avoid disturbing the trail. The prints were spaced evenly, purposefully. Whoever made them wasn't running. They were walking. Calmly. That troubled him more than if they'd been fleeing. The prints ended at the base of the boulders. Cole swept his eyes across the rocks, scanning for any sign of movement. Nothing. Just jagged shapes casting short shadows. But the tracks told him the truth. Someone had come here, descended into an area horses couldn't reach, carried something heavy, and left without being seen. He knelt beside the last footprint. "What were you hiding?" he whispered. For a moment, the desert gave no answer. Then, from the corner of his eye, he caught something, a thin glint of metal wedge between two rocks. He pried it loose, revealing a tiny cylindrical object no longer than his thumb. Hollow inside, and on its exterior, a faint engraving, a symbol resembling a small, stylized horse head with an angular line running through it. He frowned. Branding marks varied wildly, but he'd never seen this one. Not on any ranch in the region. He pocketed the cylinder and stood, scanning the horizon again. A low rumble rolled in from far off. Not thunder, not machinery. Hoofbeats. He turned sharply. In the distance, a plume of dust rose as a rider approached fast. Too fast for a casual patrol. Too straight of a line to be coincidence. Cole moved back toward Sage carefully, never taking his eyes off the approaching figure. Whoever it was, they were coming with intent. He mounted just as the rider slowed, pulling up 30 feet away. A man Cole didn't recognize. Mid-40s, lean frame, dark sunglasses, even though the sun wasn't harsh yet. "Pneumatics?" the stranger asked. Cole's muscles tensed. "Who's asking? Just someone who heard you were poking around where you shouldn't be." The words hit with an unsettling calm. "Easy, little ones," Cole murmured, kneeling. His voice softened the way it always did around newborns. "Where on earth did you come from?" The black filly nudged his boot, desperate for any comfort. Cole placed a hand on its back, feeling the tremors running through its thin frame. This wasn't just odd. It was impossible. He scanned the area again, looking for any hint of a mare, Blood trails, hoof prints, drag marks. Something. Anything. But the sand was untouched except for the shallow indents made by the fillies' bodies. Newborn horses cannot walk well for the first hour. They certainly can't sprint across the desert and tuck themselves neatly against a vertical wall like someone set them there intentionally. Cole felt a chill crawl up his spine despite the rising heat. Someone had put them here. But why? He gathered the fillies one at a time, lifting them carefully against his chest. They were so light it scared him, like they hadn't been nursed, like they hadn't ever had a chance. He carried them toward the access ladder, creating a makeshift sling using his jacket to get them up the climb safely. When he finally reached Sage again, the mare snorted, troubled by the scent of newborn distress. Cole laid the fillies gently in the shade of the saddle blanket and gave him water drop by drop from his canteen. He worked fast but steady. He'd done emergency feedings before, but this situation gnawed at him. There was no logical explanation for any of it. He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Maddox," he said, voice firm. "I've got 3 abandoned newborn fillies at Section 9 of the irrigation canal. No mare. No tracks. Something's wrong out here." Static. Then a reply. "Copy that, Cole. You sure they're newborns? We didn't get any reports of foaling from nearby ranches." "That's because they weren't born near here," he answered. "They couldn't have been, and they sure as hell didn't crawl down a 30-foot wall." Silence on the other end. Cole didn't blame them. He didn't fully believe what he was seeing either. By the time he loaded the fillies into a padded carrier on a small utility trailer he kept for emergencies, the sun was up, painting the desert gold. Normally, that view brought Cole peace. But not today. Something about the landscape felt watched, as if eyes lingered beyond the boulders, waiting for him to leave. Before heading back toward the ranch, he took one more slow look at the base of the canal wall. That untouched sand. Those perfect, unbroken stretches of desert floor. 3 newborns appearing out of nowhere. Someone had gone to a lot of trouble to hide them, or to abandon them where no one should have found them. Except he had, and maybe that wasn't an accident. As he rode back, Sage moved faster than usual, almost urging him along the trail. The fillies whined softly behind him, huddled together. Cole couldn't shake the feeling that whatever he'd stumbled into wasn't over. This was the beginning of something. Something tangled, something dangerous. And the strangest part? He had a gut feeling he'd only uncovered the first layer. A thin slice of truth lying on top of something much deeper. Something the desert wasn't ready to give up yet.